The average person is said to spend 15 minutes in the bathroom. Why not take advantage of that time and learn something new? Presenting the 15-minute podcast on weird facts, crazy details, and funny particulars that you'll be able to enjoy while you're taking on your free time. Welcome to This Shit with Sam Butler. Welcome to another episode of The Shit Podcast. I have my friend, stand-up comedian, and buddy from San Antonio. Actually, you're from Socorro.
Socorro, baby.
Yeah, but you live in San Antonio. You've been there for a few years now. You're doing stand-up. You're blowing up everywhere. You were just on an episode of The Shit Podcast and Está Cagado. So
right.
Welcome
if you guys
back.
know Spanish, check it out. The
Check
giraffe one will blow your mind.
It's cool. Yeah. But I wanted to talk to you about something that I think is near and dear to your heart. And I picked this episode specifically because I knew you would be here. You just started a new podcast called Vinyl Snacks.
Yeah, baby.
Bro, I love that podcast. I watch it. It's brand new. I know you're just barely getting it off the ground.
Yeah, I think I'm on like episode 11, I think. So it's fairly new.
I really like the whole idea of it because I don't have a vinyl collection. I don't even have a record player anymore. I mean, I don't even have a tape deck anymore. You know, I mean, All that stuff's antique. But I know that we've traveled, we've done shows, we've toured all over the country, and everywhere that we go, you got to go find a vinyl store.
Yeah, that's kind of become a thing. Like, there's just so many. Like, and vinyl collecting right now is coming back.
Yes.
So there's a big demand for it now. More people are starting to buy vinyls and stuff like that. So every time I go to a city, I always try to go to any local record store. So I've been to Chicago, LA, you know, Nashville.
I've been to a bunch of those with you just hanging out.
Yeah.
And I'm shocked because like we'll make a couple $100 on the show from the previous night and you'll spend a couple $100 on records.
I'll be like, I end up, it weighs more than my luggage, dude.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, dude, you just blew your whole wad on records.
For real, man.
Yeah.
Damn, man.
Nah, we make more than a couple $100. I'm lying, but still, I see that you do make a point of going. I mean, dude, we've been on our way to the airport, and you're like, bro, what time is our flight? Noon. Okay, then can we go at 9 a.m? I'm like, dude, they're not even open. Let's just be there so I can make it. So I respect the fact that you are into the vinyls. Yeah. I think you even got John Polar Bear back into it. I think he was already a fan, but I think that became something that we started doing as buddies.
Well, the cool thing about the podcast is that even if you don't have a vinyl, you can still watch it because I talk about different albums, and in the album I talk about certain songs. Mm-hmm. So even if you don't have an album, you can still look up the song that I recommend. So I always try to recommend a song that you could probably find on Amazon or Apple Music or anything like that. Yeah. So even if you don't have a vinyl, so you could still check it out and find. And then not only that, I also talk about history of bands and artists. And,
and you have a huge comedy collection too, right?
Yeah, I have a pretty good
a vinyl record comedy. That's awesome. As comedians, that's awesome. Yeah. And but did you know records come in different sizes? I'm pretty sure if you're a vinyl head, you know that.
Yes, they do.
Okay, they come in 12-inch, 10-inch, and 7-inch.
Yeah, 3. Yeah, correct.
Do you know they come in different revolutions?
Ooh, what's that? What do you mean by that?
RPMs.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Which is revolutions per minute.
Yeah, I think it's like 40.
There's a 45.
Yeah, and then
there's a 78 RPM.
Ah, yeah, that's 78.
Yeah, and there's 300.
I always wondered about that. I guess because the record, I mean, I just like collecting records. Mm-hmm. There's still so much that I'm learning from it.
Yes.
So is there a reason why it has different speed? Because of the weight of the record? Or?
Yes. Actually, that's one of the things that I really wanted to talk about. Yeah. What happens is first of all, the first records that came out were like 7 inches.
Ooh, right? Just like me.
Yeah. Yeah. But
I'm lying.
But they had like here I have the information here. Okay, so Y 33 1/3, which is the revolutions per minute on a standard 12-inch.
Okay.
Right. So Thomas Edison's first Victrolas were hand cranked.
Yeah.
So the speed varied on how fast you cranked it, right? And
I crank it pretty fast.
Yeah, you're like, we're the chipmunks. I see, yeah, you know.
Well,
but it didn't last very long. Yeah, you cranked it fast, but it didn't last very long.
Well, I know Edison had it was different. It was before it turned into wax, right? It used to have like a cylinder to it.
Yeah, and then he eventually got into the actual records with the grooves in them.
Yeah, Alexander Bell.
Yeah, and it says Thomas Edison's Victrolas, which are the record players,
crankers,
right? And so then they started putting electric motors. The problem is that the electric motors at that time had 3,600 RPMs.
Dang.
3,600 RPMs, which they had to put a transmission on the motor.
Dang.
Yeah, so what happens is you have a motor that's going as fast as it can. It goes into a series of cranks, and that slows it down, right, to 46.1.
Oh, wow.
Right. And the reason they went with those motors is because they were the most affordable motors. So that's what gave you the 78 revolutions per minute.
Wow, that's interesting.
Right. The problem is that only gave you about 5 minutes worth of music per side.
Oh, I got
on a record. And that's why the need to build a bigger record with a slower revolutions per minute. And that increased the time to 22 minutes of playing time.
Give you the options.
Yeah. That's why that's for.
Wow.
Now the 45s are still used, which are 45 revolutions per minute, but those are usually used for singles.
Yeah, singles. Yeah.
One song.
Yeah.
Right? And they might have one song on the front, one song on the back, and those were very popular for jukeboxes.
Yeah.
Right? So in the 1920s, movies used to use records.
So they would play them because they were silent because they wouldn't talk.
Yeah, because that's when they started coming up with the
speakers with the record.
Yeah, they came up with an idea of how to make sound into movies. So this is 1920s. You remember Charlie Chaplin was early 1900s. So now you're adding sound and they're using records.
Wow. I had no idea. That's interesting.
And then they start to find out that they can't really keep up with the motors. So they went with a gear ratio of 108 to 1, which resulted in the standard 33 1/3 RPM record.
Wow, that's so cool, man.
Right?
I had no idea.
So in the 1930s, they figure out how to put sound on film.
Into the film.
Yeah, and so now you're watching a movie that actually has sound, like we do today.
Yeah,
it's the 1930s. Am I right, Ram? Ram knows everything about movies, right? And they replaced the Vitaphone system, which was the system they used for movies, and now they kept the sound on film. But this was something that DJs and radio stations really enjoyed, was the 33.5 revolutions per minute. So they kept using those records. That was their favorite record and their favorite playback.
Wow.
And that's more or less why you have these different records.
Wow, that's interesting, man. I had no idea.
Yeah. Now, there's a couple of weird facts out there about records, but they say that the sound is better on the songs on the outside of the record than on the inside of the record.
Like as it goes inwards?
Yes, it goes inwards.
Oh, wow.
So sound engineers have decided the songs with the most bass and the most
would go on the outside.
Would go on the outside, and they'd work their way in.
Wow.
And it has to do with the stylus or the needle and how pronounced that turn is in the sound.
Oh, I got you.
And that changes the quality of the sound. So generally, when you're listening to a record, the better songs or the songs with the
are always on the edge.
And also they had to engineer the grooves. Mm-hmm. If the groove was too wide, that would change the sound, and if the groove was too narrow, the needle would skip.
Yeah.
So when they decided on how to engineer the grooves correctly, that's when you had what you call hi-fi or high fidelity.
What?
Yeah, which fidelity means loyalty, which means the needle stays in the groove.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, so that's the hi-fi sound.
Wow.
And it took a long time to figure it out. I mean, it took engineers. The very first records that came out came out in the 1930s.
Yeah, I know they're like really heavy, big.
Well, there was some that were made out of shellac, which was
So it's a material of the wax.
Yeah. The shellac was like a, it's almost like a hard plastic.
Oh
Right?
yeah. I felt them. Yeah.
Vinyl, which was a new technology.
Because the old ones are a little bit more stiff.
And they're they were brittle when they would break.
Yeah, they would break. Yeah.
So it was in 1931 that they come out with the first vinyl record. It was a 12-inch recording released by RCA Victor. And can you guess what music was on that recording? 1931.
1931?
Yeah.
1931.
It was, I'm going to let you off the hook because there's no way you can guess this, but it goes da 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 da.
Oh, Beethoven?
Da 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 da. Beethoven's Fifth Symphony.
Beethoven comes around.
Yeah.
Killing it. Even on vinyl.
Yeah, and it was performed by Philadelphia Symphony Orchestra.
Wow.
Yeah, and they're like, why Leopold Stokowski was the first 12-inch recording released by RCA Victor, and this was the director
I gotta get that on my collection
of the orchestra. Yeah. It was Victor's new vinyl base Victorolac compound, which was used for this recording, that provided a much quieter playing surface compared to the shellac typically used for the 78s.
Wow.
Right? So this is what happens. They play this because RCA's headquarters are in Camden, New Jersey. Camden, New Jersey is right on the border with Philadelphia, so they used the Philadelphia Symphony Orchestra to record this. Right?
Yeah, very popular.
So you're thinking instant hit, right? 1930s, vinyl record, new technology.
Yeah. It's like
the Depression hit.
Oh, I just wiped them out.
So people did not buy records.
They're like, we don't want to hear any shit. I'm
People-
pissed off.
Yeah, they're like, we don't have anything to play it on.
I need bread. Do you have bread?
You have bread. I'll trade you these records for some
I don't
bread.
give a shit about music right now.
Yeah.
My family's dying.
So it wasn't till, several years later, 17 years later, Columbia Records released the first commercially available micro groove plastic. Micro groove is the groove that now we're talking about that gives you that high fidelity sound.
Wow.
12-inch, 33 1/3 LP. And this new technology extended the playback time to 22 minutes and was much more quieter than shellac.
Wow.
Right? And that's how it started. So let's see. We're running kind of out of time. But let's talk about also, how many of your records do you have that are...
Well, hold on. What I want to ask real quick is, at what time does Satan get involved with vinyl records?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. That's like a Leyendas Legendarias
At what time was...
episode.
Yeah, I'm going to have to ask my friends at Leyendas Legendarias. What year did Satan think it was a good investment to put his evilness in vinyl records?
When did they figure out to play it backwards was demonic...
Yeah, when did he decide, I think this would be a great... It's like, when did drugs come into play? Yeah, there.
Yeah. Now, here's a weird fact. It took 40 years from the time vinyl records came out to when video games came out. 40 years.
40 years between vinyls and video games.
Yeah, and video games.
Wow.
Yeah. And this is the weird fact. If you go back 40 years from today, we're in 1982.
Wow,
right?
That makes sense.
Yeah, and if you go back 40 years from then, you're in 1942.
Yeah. So
we're exactly the same distance away from 1982 as 1982 was from World War II.
Damn.
That's like...
Hey, Sam, I'm not here for math, all right?
Yeah, no. But think about that.
That makes sense.
The same amount of time has passed from World War II to 1982 as from 1982 to today. That's insane to me because I was a kid in 1982.
Yeah.
Right, and you go, wow, that's like that. It's because it seems like 1990 was not that long ago.
Yeah.
And that's already been 30. 1992 was 30 years ago.
Crazy, dude.
Yeah, it's fast, right? So it took 40 years. Now, here's the weird fact. It's not that it's 40 years apart. Is that there's actually video game and vinyl record collaborations now.
Oh, it's all coming back around.
You can get the video game soundtracks on limited edition vinyl records.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's super popular.
Yeah.
So I could see how that would be like Resident Evil or different. Yeah. You could actually get their soundtrack.
Come into full circle.
It's crazy.
Wow.
Did you know there was a Ghostbusters glow in the dark slime colored vinyl released in 2014.
Damn, that sounds awesome. Man.
It does, right?
That'd be sweet. That'd be a cool
Yeah, Ghostbusters.
glow in the dark record.
Yeah.
That sounds so awesome.
Now, the people who bought it were not happy with the quality of the recordings.
With the record skip.
Yeah. And they're going like, do you want a better record? Don't buy a green slimed Ghostbusters record.
I've noticed that some records that I've purchased, I know I bought one by Tom Petty that they released one called
was it clear?
Wildflowers. It was Wildflowers. They brought out a whole 2 vinyl record disc. But whenever I buy a record that's like mixed in colors, I've noticed that it has issues playing.
That is one of the facts. The black records play the best. If you get the different colored ones, for whatever reason, it's either the grooves or the consistency of the material. Usually the sound or the skip happens more often.
I've had that issue.
So that's interesting that you brought it up because that's actually one of the things that they say. The traditional black vinyl records are the best.
Always, I've always had issues with that.
How many records do you think you have in your collection?
I'd say about probably over 150 records.
Okay. The biggest collector, do you know what his name is?
He's a guy he's an older guy, right? Like from the 70s that worked with a lot of musicians and then they would send him records.
No, this guy is actually a Brazilian businessman. His name's Roberto Alves Freitas, right? His collection was said to be 8 million records strong.
8 million
8 million records. Yeah.
Damn, I'm almost so close.
Yeah. So he has a team.
Where does he put him? How does his wife let him do that?
He has a team of people that he's a billionaire. He has a team of people that go to all these different countries and they buy out entire record stores when they're going out of business. And he has a team cleaning and cataloging every single record that he owns.
Well, that's kind of not a bad investment because whenever you buy a record, it's just going to increase in value at some point.
Yeah, maybe.
Hopefully. 8 million. 8 million records, dude.
I don't know. Neon green.
I didn't even know there was that many good songs. You know what I mean?
8 million records, bro.
Wow, that's wild, man.
Now, what was the most expensive vinyl record ever sold? We're gonna wrap it up. This is the Royal Flush
record or something, right?
You would think, right?
Yeah, it's something.
Yeah. There's a lot of weird facts still. Like there's record.
Is it a band?
Yes. There's a record. There's some records out in space.
Oh,
made out of copper,
yeah.
right? On the Voyager.
Blind Willie.
Yeah. No, they're actually messages from Earth to whoever finds them. They're in copper, in 5 different languages.
Yes.
Okay, so that's like
Blind Willie Johnson.
Yeah,
that's his name.
Now, the most expensive vinyl record ever sold. You're gonna be like, what?
What is it?
It's Wu-Tang Clang's.
Oh, that's right.
Once Upon a Time in Shaolin.
Yeah, that's right. It was bought by that guy, Shirley. Shkreli,
Only one copy was ever produced with a double LP.
Wow.
Yeah. Housed in 2 handcrafted nickel silver boxes that took 3 months to make, just the boxes. They recorded it over 6 years.
Wow.
Martin Shkreli, I believe I'm saying his name right.
Farm bro guy.
Yep. Who now has been convicted and incarcerated.
Yeah.
Had that record confiscated by the FBI.
Dang.
That's part of his.
It's becoming this mythos.
Yeah. Well, they said that he bought that record for an undisclosed amount. So nobody knows what he paid for it. But the FBI confiscated it and sold it at auction.
Oh,
right?
No way, dude.
And they sold it to Pleaser DAO, which is an NFT group, and they paid $4 million.
No way, $4 million $4 million for the record.
Yes. The only one in existence. They have 78 employees, so they all own a part of that record, all of their employees.
That's wild,
man. Finally, and this is the very last thing, you call vinyl records or vinyl. If you want to irritate real collectors, if you call them vinyls, they'll hate your guts. It's
so you're supposed to just call them records
or vinyl.
Oh, you can't use both.
Vinyl. No, you call them both, but you can't call them vinyls.
Oh, okay. No,
That's like saying
vinyl.
feet.
Yeah, I call them vinyl. Yeah, vinyl.
Vinyl.
Yeah.
Even if it's more than one, vinyl
Yeah,
is
I
plural.
always say- yeah. I'm pretty good.
It's
All right.
plural. Yeah, I didn't know that. I thought
That's
yeah,
interesting. I didn't know that either.
Vinyl is both the singular and plural form
Yeah.
of
makes
the
sense.
of the word vinyl records.
Wow. Well, thanks for fucking shitting on me today, man.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Appreciate all that shit on my brain, dude. Just shit all over me.
All
Dog.
the shit. Yeah.
Full of shit right now.
Now you have now when you have a party or something, people congratulate you on your podcast. You got a little bit more knowledge.
Yeah, man. Well, I
Yeah.
appreciate it,
But,
Sam.
but thank you for
very much.
coming out, dude. I know we're in Juarez and you made an effort to be here.
That's right, baby.
So I appreciate it, man.
I always enjoy coming out here.
And with that, we wrap it up. Thank you all for joining us on this episode of the Shit Podcast. Israel, where can people find you on your social media?
You guys can find me on pretty much all platforms under One Bad Comic, ONEBADCOMIC. Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all that type of stuff. So I do release my podcast every Tuesday at around 11 a.m.
On Facebook, right?
Central Time.
But
Sorry?
it's on Facebook.
Yeah, I post it on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. So
Yeah,
I
it's
post
cool.
it separately on all the platforms.
Yeah, I know that
YouTube.
I started watching it on Facebook, and then I subscribed to your channel. And I'm watching it now.
Yeah, man,
love
I
it.
appreciate it. And likewise with you too, man.
Thanks,
I'm
man.
always watching your podcast. It's always cool to watch.
And so make sure you check out Israel Garcia, One Bad Comic. You can find me on social media and on all the podcast platforms as Sta Cagado Podcast, because this is the English version of that podcast. And that's Sta Cagado Podcast, STA Cagado Podcast. Awesome. And you can find me as Tu Amigo Sam on all social media platforms and my YouTube channel. Please like, subscribe, hit the notifications bell, leave your comments. If there's something we messed up or if you know more weird facts about vinyl, let us know. I'm interested to read it. I'm interested to comment. Thank you guys. That's it for this episode of the Shit Podcast.